period dropped 73%.
It's like they're really so weaklings for real. Because if I'm in that situation, if I'm an army general and I had to get people to join the army or whatever, bang, bang, bang. What happens to you if US restarts the draft?
You wake up to a pounding on your door. Two burly guys in military police uniforms are outside, and in minutes you're in the back of a Humvee heading to who knows where.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. If someone walks up to my door and goes, "Hey, you're invited to the draft," instantly acting crippled.
The draft is started, and Uncle Sam wants you. In today's episode of the Infographic Show, we'll look at what really happens to you if the US restarts the draft. It's 2025 and the war is raging across Europe, with Americans watching on nervously. The president has made the official announcement of his executive order to re-implement the draft.
Honestly, I think they'll be just fine. I think I'll honestly put up some great numbers. They could call me like the new achievements. Like I'll be inside the world record books. Like
this morning, ferocious.
The fact that you're supposed to be going to college doesn't get you out of this. Things have changed since the 2.2 million young American men were drafted between 1964 and 1973 to go to Vietnam. Things are now supposed to be much fairer. You can't defer if you're enrolled in college full-time, although they will let people finish the semester. What you do in the military will also largely depend on your educational background, so it's conceivable kids from very wealthy families might not be sent straight to the front, something people are already protesting against all over the country. You make an appointment for the pre-induction physical exam and are told what you need to bring and what's expected of you. On the day, you turn up at the military entrance processing station armed with all the documents: birth certificate, social security card, educational documents, and medical records. You don't have a serious underlying illness or a disability, but you're kinda on the heavy side, and after the pandemic, you were treated for depression and anxiety. You've heard lots of people don't meet the criteria for the draft for medical reasons. You're starting to wonder if those medical documents you brought with you mean you won't be going to Europe. This has become something of a problem for the military. The pickings have been getting slimmer and slimmer every year that passes. Between 2021 and 2022, there was a significant drop in the number of military applications. The Air Force Academy reported a 28% drop, and the Naval Academy a 20% drop. The Army reported it missed its recruitment goal by 25%, a trend that had started about a decade earlier. Around 150,000 people enlisted in the military in 2020, a 58% decrease from 1980 when almost 360,000 new people signed up. The number of applications over that period dropped 73%.
It's like they're really so weaklings for real. Because if I'm in that situation, if I'm an army general and I had to get people to join the army or whatever, bang, bang, bang. Oh, okay.
You said that you got a disability. Oh, it's okay.
Have us at the check. We'll check you out.
Before the draft, the Pentagon said only about 9% of young adult Americans felt inclined to apply. But what was just as worrying was only 23% of young Americans met the physical requirements. It was 29% only as far back as 2016, and a massive 50% of young adults were considered fit for military service in 1970.
So,
at the processing
are they trying
station,
to say that we're getting
you have to fill out
lazy?
a few forms, some of them about your health history. Then you get on the scales and you have your height measured. You don't qualify as obese according to your body mass index score, but you're certainly no John Rambo. They give you a vision test, and after that you strap on some headphones for a hearing test. They check your blood pressure, listen to your heart and lungs, and give your joints and muscles a quick going over just to make sure you're a fully functioning male. There's also a little bit of physical training, but it's nothing more than a few push-ups and sit-ups. You were expecting a 2-mile run, but it seems they've scrapped that part of the test. They stick a syringe in your arm and draw some blood, then they hand you a plastic cup and they tell you to fill it with pee. A 26-drug panel test will check for all kinds of drugs, including marijuana. Oops, you think? You're wondering if that blunt you smoked in the weekend will show up. But the blood test is mainly to check your liver function, kidney function, cholesterol levels, glucose levels, and to look for various serious diseases, infections, and anemia. The next
so
part
5%
is a
of
literacy,
Americans
math skills, and reasoning abilities test. They already have your educational record, but the tests are designed with military-focused applications in mind. It's multiple choice and it covers arithmetic, general science, even has questions on electronics, automotive stuff, and verbal expression. Your score might dictate what you're going to do once you're deployed. You never know, you could end up working in military intelligence. Are you fluent in Russian? After this, you have your psychological and moral evaluation. Your military career is a non-starter if you've ever committed a serious crime. You'd be labeled 4F, unfit to
What
serve.
is that even?
25% to 33% of Americans have a criminal record.
Wait. 25 to 30% of Americans have a criminal record?
Around 19 million have a felony conviction. Minor crimes won't make you exempt. As you're going through all these tests, you can't help but notice that some of the people at the center are not exactly, in the physical sense, what you'd call soldier material. Some of them look too big to get in a plane, never mind jumping out of one. From 1971 to 1974, only about 14% of Americans were obese, and about 2% severely obese. 50 years later, the numbers are about 43% obese and 10% severely obese. Childhood obesity
More
rates
than
went from 5% in the early
50%?
70s to about 20% in the 2020s.
More than half of every American is obese? It ain't me.
The Department of Defense says obesity is one of the leading causes of people being turned away from the military. It's definitely a major issue, so they've introduced a new Future Soldier Preparatory course, a 90-day high-intensity training course. But this isn't boot camp, it's just regular fitness training. And even if someone is obese and they can't lose weight, they're being deployed into more sedentary roles. What about when you were treated for anxiety and depression? You know for a fact that quite a few of your friends take medicines for psychiatric issues. Can you or your pill-popping friends still be drafted? The DoD has rules about not accepting people who've been diagnosed with mental illness, usually within the last 36 months. Unfortunately, in 2025, that is a lot of young Americans, making a considerable dent in the draft numbers. Studies show that there were significant increases in young people suffering from anxiety, depression, and behavior problems in the 70s and 80s to the 2020s.
While back in the 1950, 1970, all they had was a horseshoe, a house made of wood, and working 19-hour shifts. Now we have cell phones, TikTok, pampered beds, houses that are made out of harder wood.
There was a noticeable uptick in numbers from the 2000s to the 2010s. The problem is worse for young people, aka you. The U.S. Office of Population Affairs reported not too long ago that an estimated 49.5% of adolescents had a mental health disorder in their lives. In a recent
Jesus.
study by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, it was found that 1 in 3 U.S. adults aged 18 to 25 had a mental illness in the past year. 1 in 10 had a serious mental illness, and then there's the 13.5% of young adults aged 18 to 25 with a substance use disorder. This will count some people out, but it's not an issue for you. Your diagnosis of depression and anxiety was made a few years ago. As for other young people with psychiatric ailments or substance abuse problems, the military is thinking about offering pre-basic training counseling services. It's another evolving issue that's very 2025.
Was that wait a minute. Is this a Apple Vision Pro? Is this where my tax dollars are going?
The military's having to get very creative. You don't really want to serve, but you've almost certainly passed the assessment with flying colors. As it turns out, you're a slightly overweight Gen Z G.I. Joe, but the hard part is still to come. You could of course have told a litany of lies in an attempt to get out of military service, but there'd be more evaluations, and making false claims, as you were told by a very stern officer, could have serious legal consequences. You go home and wait, and about 10 days later you receive a letter, the induction order. You're in. Marijuana was found in your blood, but it's not an issue. Getting high doesn't get you out of a trip to Europe. At an appeals board, you can still apply for an exemption, a postponement, or a deferment, but you'll have to show you have good reason. You heard about a guy down the street who was a conscientious objector, but he had to go through the process of proving he had a, quote, deeply held belief. This meant that his church submitted letters on his behalf, and he attended in-person hearings. He might now
this just
qualify
to
for a
get out of the
1O classification,
military.
non-combat service, and end up doing some kind of civilian job for the war effort, or get a 1AO classification, non-combatant military service, and still work within the military but maybe as an admin or a medic. Your next stop is to meet with a service enlistment counselor. Turns out your test scores were excellent. You might not be the fittest draftee, but according to those scores, you're one of the smartest. The counselor goes through various jobs that you could do and asks what you'd like to do. Doesn't mean you'll get what you want, but you might. It's not quite basic training time yet. You've still got to vow to defend the United States Constitution and obey the Uniform Code of Military Justice at the Military Induction Center.
So much
and then,
water, am I tripping?
welcome to the United States military. You
Okay.
have every intention of going to basic training,
Oh
but
my
the
God,
doubts
bro,
start
get
to
that
creep
gut
in
out
when
my
you see the
screen.
news reports about U.S. casualties. Then you hear about your school friend Jim, who came home in a flag-draped coffin. Suddenly, war feels very real. Your doubts turn to fear. Fear makes you irrational, and irrational sends you off to your friend's house to hide out and play Call of Duty, which is much safer than the real thing. You are now AWOL, absent
I mean,
without
he's
leave,
not wrong, though.
punishable under Article 86. If a month passes, you could be charged with desertion, punishable under Article 85. If you have a legitimate excuse, you might still be okay, but only if you hand yourself in quite quickly. Seems like a great plan until one of your friend's hyper-patriotic parents snitches on you. And that's when you get that knock at the door from the military police. You've committed a federal crime. You explain your anxiety problems and the fact that your
Yeah.
friend was just killed, and to your surprise, you're shown
Yeah.
some leniency. You're very lucky. You now
Come on,
have about
man.
12 weeks of basic training and then another 8 of advanced training. If the war escalates, the training period can be expedited. If you fail it, you'll be sent in for adaptive training. No matter what happens, you're being sent to the front line. As you hunker down in a trench, bullets flying past your head, you think of the other guy you know from school, the one who left the country before his digital passport could be flagged. He's been away for months already. He recently posted a photo to Instagram with him on a beach in Thailand. Hashtag beach life and hashtag draft is slavery. He's now a fugitive and he faces a $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. And there is no way he'll be shown leniency. He also faces losing his civil rights.
So no matter what, you're cooked. That's what I'm hearing. Couldn't be me though. Make sure you like the video because I know you're gonna enjoy it. Please and thank you.